Hello everyone, today I am going to talk about one of the most important component of microbiology, microbial growth. Growth can be defined as a steady and orderly increase in all the chemical components of an organism and usually results in an increase in the mass and frequently results in cell division. When microbes are provided with nutrients and the required environmental factors, they become metabolically active and grow. Growth takes place in two levels. First, a cell synthesizes new cell components and increases its size. And second, the number of cells in a population increases. Growth of unicellular microorganisms such as bacteria, yeast and protozoas, however, is more properly defined in terms of an increase in the size of a given population. This may be expressed as an increase in either the number of individuals or the total amount of biomass. Thus, the cell size and number may change independently or simultaneously depending upon the interaction of various biological and environmental factors. This capacity for multiplication, increasing the size of the population by cell division, has remarkable importance in microbial control, infectious disease and biotechnology. In the following sections, I will focus mainly on the characteristics of bacterial growth that are generally representative of single cell microbe. The basis of population growth. First, binary fission. The division of a bacterial cell occurs mainly through binary or transverse fission. Binary means that one cell becomes two and transverse refers to the division plane forming across the width of the cell. During binary fission, the parent cell enlarges, duplicates its chromosome and forms a central transverse septum that divides the cell into two daughter cells. This process is repeated at intervals by each new daughter cell in turn, and with each successive round of division, the population increases. The stages in this continuous process are shown in the figure. The rate of population growth. The time required for a complete fission cycle from parent cell to two new daughter cells is called the generation or doubling time. The term generation has a similar meaning as it does in humans. It is the period between an individual's birth and the time of producing offsprings. In bacteria, each new fission cycle increases the population by a factor of 2 or doubles it. Thus, the initial parent stage consists of one cell, the first generation results in 2 cells, the second 4, the third 8, then 16, 32, 64 and so on. As long as the environment remains favorable, this doubling effect can continue at a constant rate. With the passing of each generation, the population will double over and over again. The length of generation time is a measure of the growth rate of an organism. Compared with the growth rates of most other living things, bacterial growth is extremely rapid. The average generation time is 30 to 60 minutes under optimum conditions. The shortest generation times average 15 to 20 minutes and the longest generation times are in days. For example, Mycobacterium leprae, the causative agent of leprosy, has a generation time of 10 to 30 days as long as in some animals. Most pathogens have relatively short doubling times. For example, Salmonella enteritidis and Staphylococcus aureus, bacteria that causes food-borne illness, double in 20 to 30 minutes. The growth curve. Now, population growth is studied by analyzing the growth curve of a microbial culture. When microorganisms are cultivated in liquid medium, usually they are grown in a batch culture or closed system, that is, they are incubated in a closed culture vessel with a single batch of medium. Because no fresh medium is provided during incubation, nutrient concentrations declines and concentration of waste increases. The growth of microorganisms reproducing by binary fission can be plotted as the logarithm of the number of viable cells versus the incubation time. The resulting curve has 4 distinct phases: lag, log, stationary and death phase. So, now we will see each phase. So, first the lag phase. When microorganisms are introduced into the fresh culture medium, usually no immediate increase in cell number occurs, and therefore, this period is called the lag phase. Although cell division does not take place right away and there is no net increase in mass, the cell is synthesizing new components. A lag phase prior to the start of cell division can be necessary for a variety of reasons. For instance, the cell may be old and depleted of ATP, essential cofactors and ribosomes. They must be synthesized before growth can begin, or the medium may be different from the one the microorganisms are growing in previously. The lag phase varies considerably in length with the condition of the microorganism and the nature of the medium. When a young, vigorously growing exponential phase culture is transferred to fresh medium of the same composition, the lag phase will be short or absent. Now, second, exponential phase. During the exponential or log phase, microorganisms are growing and dividing at the maximal rate possible given their genetic potential, the nature of the medium and the conditions under which they are growing. Their rate of growth is constant during the exponential phase, that is, the microorganisms are dividing and doubling in number at regular intervals. Because each individual divides at a slightly different moment, the growth curve rises smoothly rather than in discrete jumps. The population is more uniform in terms of chemical and physiological properties during this phase. Therefore, exponential phase cultures are usually used in biochemical and physiological studies. Exponential growth is balanced growth. That is, all cellular constituents are synthesized at constant rates relative to each other. If nutrient levels or other environmental conditions changes, it results into unbalanced growth. Now, the third phase, that is the stationary phase. Eventually, population growth decreases and the growth curve becomes horizontal. This stationary phase usually is attended by bacteria at a population level of around 10⁹ cells per ml. Of course, final population size depends on nutrient availability and other factors, as well as the type of microorganisms being cultured. In the stationary phase, the total number of viable microorganisms remain constant. This may result from a balance between cell division and cell death, or the population may simply cease to divide though remaining metabolically active. Microbial populations enter the stationary phase for several reasons. One obvious factor is nutrient limitation. If an essential nutrient is severely depleted, population growth will slow down. Another factor for termination of growth may also be due to the accumulation of toxic waste products. For example, streptococci can produce so much lactic acid and other organic acids from sugar fermentation that their medium become acidic and growth is inhibited. Bacteria in a batch culture may enter stationary phase in response to starvation. This probably often occurs in nature as well, because many environments have quite low nutrient levels. Starvation can be a positive experience for bacteria. Many do not respond with obvious morphological changes such as endospore formation, but only decrease somewhat in overall size, often accompanied by protoplast shrinkage and nucleoid condensation. Now, the fourth, that is the death phase. Detrimental environmental changes like nutrient depletion and the buildup of toxic waste lead to the faster decline in the number of viable cells, characteristics of the death phase. The death of a microbial population, like its growth during the exponential phase, is usually logarithmic, that is, a constant proportion of cells dies every hour. This pattern in the viable cell count holds even when the total cell number remains constant, because the cells simply fail to lyse after dying. Often, the only way of deciding whether a bacterial cell is viable is by incubating it in fresh medium. If it does not grow and reproduce, it is assumed to be dead. That is, death is defined to be the irreversible loss of the viability to reproduce. Although most of microbial population usually dies in a logarithmic fashion, but at a slower rate than the log phase, the death rate may decrease after the population has been drastically reduced. This is due to the expanded survival of particular resistant cells. For this and other reasons, the death phase curve may be complex. Now, let us see what are the practical importance of growth curve. The tendency of populations to exhibit phases of growth has important implications in microbial control, infection, food microbiology and cultural technology. Antimicrobial agents such as heat and disinfectants rapidly accelerate the death phase in all populations. Microbes in the exponential growth phase are more susceptible to these agents than are those that have entered the stationary phase. In general, actively growing cells are more prone to conditions that disrupt cell metabolism and binary fission. Now, let us see the influence of environmental factors on growth. The growth of microorganisms is greatly influenced by the physicochemical nature of their surroundings. An understanding of environmental influences aids in the control of microbial growth and the study of the ecological distribution of microorganisms. The ability of some microorganisms to adapt to extreme and hostile environments is truly remarkable. Prokaryotes are present anywhere life can exist. In this section, we shall briefly review how some of the most important environmental factors affect microbial growth. The major environmental factors that affect the microbial growth are solutes and water activity, pH, temperature, oxygen level, pressure and radiation. Now, let us first see solutes and water activity. Because a selectively permeable plasma membrane separates microorganisms from their environment, they can be affected by changes in the osmotic concentration of their surroundings. If a microorganism is placed in a hypotonic solution, that is one with a lower osmotic concentration, water will enter the cell and cause it to burst. When microbes with rigid cell walls are placed in a hypertonic solution, water levels and the plasma membrane shrinks away from the wall, a process known as plasmolysis. This dehydrates the cell and may damage the plasma membrane. The cell usually becomes metabolically inactive and stops to grow. Now, pH. pH is a measure of hydrogen ion activity of a solution and is defined as the negative logarithm of the hydrogen ion concentration. It is not surprising that pH dramatically affects microbial growth. Each species has a definite pH range of growth and pH growth optimum. Acidophiles that generally grow below pH 5 and grow optimally at pH 2 or below Neutrophiles between pH 5.5 and 8 and alkaliphiles prefer the pH range of 8.5 to 11.5. In general, different microbial groups have characteristic pH preferences. Most bacteria and protozoa are neutrophiles. Most fungi prefer slightly acid surrounding about pH 4 to 6. Algae also seems to favor slight acidity. Now temperature. Environmental temperature strongly affects growth of microorganisms like all other organisms. Indeed, microorganisms are particularly susceptible because they are usually unicellular and their temperature varies with that of the external environment. For these reasons, the microbial cell temperature directly reflects that of the cell's surroundings. A most important factor influencing the effect of temperature on growth is the temperature sensitivity of enzyme catalyzed reactions. At low temperatures, a temperature rise increases the growth rate because the velocity of an enzyme catalyzed reaction, like that of an chemical reaction, will roughly double for every 10 degrees Celsius rise in temperature. Because the rate of each reaction increases, metabolism as a whole is more active at higher temperatures and the microorganisms grow faster. Beyond a certain point, further increases actually slow down growth and sufficiently high temperatures are lethal. High temperatures damage microorganisms by denaturing enzymes, transport carriers and other proteins. Microbial membranes are also disrupted by temperature extremes. The lipid bilayer simply melts and disintegrates. Oxygen concentration. An organism able to grow in the presence of atmospheric oxygen is an aerobe, whereas one that can grow in its absence is an anaerobe. Almost all multicellular organisms are completely dependent on atmospheric oxygen for growth, that is, they are obligate aerobes. Oxygen serves as an terminal electron acceptor for the electron transport chain in aerobic respiration. In addition, aerobic eukaryotes employ oxygen in the synthesis of sterols and unsaturated fatty acids. Facultative anaerobes do not require oxygen for growth, but do grow better in its presence. In the presence of oxygen, they will use aerobic respiration. Intolerant anaerobes simply ignore oxygen and grow equally well whether it is present or not. In contrast, strict or obligate anaerobes do not tolerate oxygen at all and die in its presence. Aerotolerant and strict anaerobes cannot generate energy through respiration and must employ fermentation or anaerobic respiration pathways for this purpose. Finally, there are aerobes called microaerophiles that are damaged by the normal atmospheric level of oxygen, that is 20%, and require oxygen level below the range of 2 to 10% for growth. A microbial group may show more than one type of relationship to oxygen. All 5 types are found among the prokaryotes and protozoa. Fungi are normally aerobic, but a number of species, particularly among the yeasts, are facultative anaerobes. Algae is almost always obligate aerobe. It should be noted that the ability of a microbe to grow in both aerobic and anaerobic environments provides considerably flexibility and is an ecological advantage. Pressure. Most organisms spend their lives on land or on the surface of water, always subjected to a pressure of 1 atmosphere and are never affected significantly by pressure. The hydrostatic pressure can reach 600 to 1100 atmosphere in the deep sea, while the temperature is about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. Despite these extremities, bacteria survive and adapt. Many are barotolerant. Increased pressure does adversely affect them, but not as much as it does non-tolerant bacteria. Some bacteria in the gut of deep sea invertebrates are truly barophilic. They grow more rapidly at high pressures. These gut bacteria may play an important role in nutrient recycling in the deep sea. Radiation. Our world is bombarded with various types of electromagnetic radiations. Sunlight is the major source of radiation on the earth. It includes visible light, ultraviolet radiation, infrared rays and radio waves. Visible light is a most noticeable and important aspect of our environment. All life is dependent on the ability of photosynthetic organisms to trap the light energy of the sun. Many forms of electromagnetic radiations are very harmful to microorganisms. This is particularly true of ionizing radiation, radiation of very short wavelength or high energy, which can cause atoms to lose electrons or ionize. Low levels of ionizing radiation will produce mutations and may indirectly result in death, whereas higher levels are indirectly lethal. Now, coming to the next section, that is measurement or analysis of microbial growth. Microbiologists have developed several techniques of analyzing bacterial growth quantitatively and qualitatively. Either population mass or number may be followed because growth leads to increase in both. So, now I will tell you briefly about the most commonly employed techniques for growth measurement with their advantages and disadvantages. No single technique is always best. The most appropriate approach will depend on the experimental situation. All the methods fall into two main categories: those that count total cell numbers and those that count viable cell only. Now, first we will see total cell counts that are generally done by direct microscopic examination. A specialized glass slide is employed which is calibrated to accept a tiny sample that is spread over a pre-measured grid of known area. Commonly, Petroff-Hauser counting chamber is used for counting prokaryotes, as using a counting chamber is easy, inexpensive and relatively quick. It also gives information about the size and morphology of microorganisms. Other total cell count methods use cell sorting devices, that is electronic counters such as Coulter counter. The Coulter counter gives accurate result with larger cells. The limitations are associated due to interferences by small debris particles, the formation of filaments and other problems, as well as it yield count of all cells whether alive or dead. A flow cytometer works on a similar principle, and in addition to counting, it can measure cell size and even differentiate between viable and non-viable cells. Now, second, a viable cell count. It is a measure of the number of living cells in a sample, or more specifically those capable of multiplying and producing a visible colony of cells. It is most commonly estimated by spreading a known volume of cell suspension onto an agar plate and counting the number of colonies that arise after a period of incubation. The method is based on the principle that each visible colony has derived from the repeated division of a single cell. In reality, it is accepted that this is not always the case, and so viable count are expressed in colony forming units, that is CFU, rather than cells per unit volume. It is generally necessary to dilute the suspension before plating out, otherwise the resulting colonies will be too numerous to count. In order to improve statistical reliability, plates are inoculated in triplicate and the mean value is taken. Viable cell counts can also be made using liquid media. In the most probable number, that is MPN technique, a series of tubes containing a broth are inoculated with a sample of a progressively more dilute cell suspension. The plates are incubated and examined for growth. The method is based on the statistical probability of each sample containing viable cells. It is well suited where low bacterial counts are to be expected, for example, in drinking water. Another method employed for the enumeration of bacteria in suspensions having low cell numbers is the membrane filter test. Here, a large volume of water is passed through a membrane filter with a pore size of, say for example, 0.45 micrometer, suitable for trapping bacteria. The filter is placed on an appropriate solid growth medium. Colonies are allowed to develop and counted after incubation. None of the methods described above provide a particularly rapid result, yet sometimes it is desirable to have an estimate of bacterial numbers immediately. A useful method of doing this is based on how turbid the liquid growth medium becomes due to bacterial growth. So, turbidometric method measure the change in optical density or absorbance of the medium, that is, how much a beam of light is scattered by the suspended particulate matter. They can be carried out very quickly by placing a sample in a spectrophotometer. Values of optical density can be directly related to bacterial numbers or mass by reference to a standard calibration curve. Thus, an estimate of bacterial numbers, although a fairly approximate one, can be obtained almost immediately during an experimental procedure. One indirect methods of measuring cell density include wet and dry weight estimations and the measurement of cell components such as total nitrogen, protein or nucleic acid.
Let us summarize the topic. Microbial growth refers to both increase in cell size and number of cells in a population. The generation time is a measure of the growth rate of a microbial species. It varies in length according to environmental conditions. Microbial cultures in a nutrient limited environment exhibit 4 distinct phases of growth: the lag phase, the exponential growth phase, the stationary phase and the death phase. Microbial cell populations show distinct phases of growth in response to changing nutrient and waste conditions. The environmental factors that influence microbial growth are temperature, pH, moisture, radiation, gases, etc. Environmental factors control microbial growth by their influence on microbial enzymes. Various methods are required to measure the growth of bacteria depending upon purpose, time available and required accuracy of the results. The microbial environment is complex and constantly changing. Characteristically, microorganisms in a particular location are exposed to many overlapping gradients of nutrients and various other environmental factors. Thus, the growth of a microorganism depends on both the nutrient supply and its tolerance of the environmental conditions. Thank you.